Here's the thing about working full time. Most of us don't want to do it. Now, if you're one of those rare birds who absolutely loves your job, then you're not going to relate to anything I'm about to share. But if, like me, you're one of those people that was done working for the man and was counting down the days to retirement, like quite literally, I was counting down the days all the time, then I think you might appreciate a few of the words of wisdom I have now that I have stopped working. And it's actually surprising, because the funny thing is, the things I thought I might actually miss when I stopped working are not things that I miss at all. In fact, it's amazing to me how natural it was to let go of all these things. Well, 2 out of the 3 things was natural. You'll hear about the third, even though I thought it was going to be really, really hard. So the 3 things that I thought I would miss when I stopped working, but actually don't miss at all, are business trips, or trips that were paid by the business, not me. Those are 2 different things I'll get into in a sec. A sense of purpose or feeling needed, like I was a part of something and, this thing can't go on without me type thing, which, spoiler alert, in all cases it absolutely did. And the third thing was a paycheck, which I really thought that I would miss and did at first, but I don't miss it at all anymore, and I will explain. But let's start with the business trips, or trips paid by the business. Early in my corporate career, I was an event manager. So I did a lot of trade shows around the world, and I got to go to very cool places like Nice and Amsterdam and Berlin, and all of these really funky, cool places. And I really appreciated that in a period of my life, like my early 30s. I loved it because I probably would never have gone to a lot of the amazing places that I went to on my own dime. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to do so. And when I was in my 30s, I would always tack extra time onto my business trips, either at the beginning or the end, so that I could actually enjoy the place where I am and get a feel for it. And it made it very affordable to travel. And also I was able to accumulate like a ton of points, which then enabled even more travel. But here's the thing that happens like in your mid 30s to mid 40s. Business travel no longer becomes an adventure. Now it becomes an obligation. And you've been to all the places that you want to go to. You've seen all of the lounges and all the airports, and there's no longer anything novel or interesting about it. You just want to get where you need to go, do what you need to do, and get back into your own time zone as soon as humanly possible. And once I could afford my own travel, I also realized that your company owns you from the minute you get on the plane to wherever you're going to the minute you touch back down again and arrive at your own house. And that means it is perfectly acceptable to send you emails, demands, requests, text messages, dumb questions at any time of day or night, because you are traveling on the company's dime, particularly when you're traveling with other people, i.e. your boss, where they want updates when they want updates, not when you actually want to go to bed. So I can't tell you how much business travel became an annoyance for me more than anything else, mostly because I don't get to choose who I travel with, and travel is already stressful and overstimulating, and you're tired and you're hungry and you just want to be in your own bed. And it makes everybody a little bit more impatient. So I in no way miss business travel at all. And my 30-year-old self would be shocked to hear that, because back then it was very novel, but you couldn't pay me enough money to go on a business trip from this point onward in my life. The next thing I thought I would miss is structure. And when I mean structure, I mean knowing that you have to get up at a certain time and you have a routine and a rhythm, and you get out of bed and you make yourself look like a human being, and you interact with other people, and your time is not your own, but you don't really look at it in a bad way. You look at it as this is what everybody does to get by. And that is absolutely true until you start to own your own time. And then you realize how long you have lived on other people's schedules and agendas that you've signed up and agreed to do. But once you stop doing that, the thought of doing it again becomes almost an impossibility. It is hard for me to just make plans with my friends these days, because I don't know how I'm going to feel on Friday night when we're about to go out the door to go meet for drinks. Or what if I don't have a good sleep the night before? Or what if I want to watch a show on TV? I've just realized how much my time has not been my own until I've reached my 50s. And now that it is, I am like marinating in this time freedom. And the idea of structure Although I know it is good for me and I will come back around to it again, I am loving this experience of having zero structure because I realize how starved I have been for it my entire life. And the last thing I assumed I would miss when I stopped working is a regular paycheck. And I think that is pretty natural for all of us. And I won't say that from day one it felt completely natural. It has taken me a good 6 months to trust that my portfolio is there and doing what it needs to do, and I don't need to have a paycheck anymore. And in reality, right now, my portfolio is actually out earning what I was making as a full-time employee. So it's really not about a gap in income, but there is something there that has felt unusual. And as I thought about it, what occurred to me is that a lot of our spending habits and our expectations about what we can have for ourselves is centered around how much money we make. And if I can use a very personal example, when I was much younger in my sort of beginning of my corporate career, and I was living in Toronto, I don't think I ever made more than about $62,000 to $63,000 a year, which is a decent salary for the time, and it's still a decent salary for some. It kind of depends on where you live and the cost of living, which at the time in Toronto was a lot less expensive than it is today. Toronto's a very expensive city, and I was living in the suburbs. But the salary that I had a very sort of clear expectation as for how you were going to live. I was able to buy a house, a very modest one, but a house nonetheless. I was able to buy a car, a very modest one. I drove a Cavalier. I lived a very modest, comfortable life that reflected the salary that I had. But fast forward a few years to the point where I got a job offer in Silicon Valley. I never made less than 6 figures. And eventually I was making multiple 6 figures. And at that point, I was driving a BMW, and my husband and I were able to afford $1 million mortgage, which sounds very fancy, but it indeed, unfortunately, is not at all. Starter homes are never less than $1 million in the Bay Area. So we were able to afford like a nice home, like a modestly decent home with a nice view, but it was not big or fancy by any means. And we were able to afford better vacations. And what hit me is that you look around you at the peers that make similar amounts of money to you, and that is what guides your spending when you're not consciously aware of it, right? Like maybe I would have been more conscious of spending if I had kids, which I didn't, or I lived in a different area of the world, but I was just spending like everyone else, and it didn't occur to me that I could be pulling back on my spending and saving so much more until that fateful day in 2017 when I heard the Mr. Money Mustache podcast and everything changed. But it's just so interesting to me that our paychecks dictate our lifestyle and our spending choices based on our peers around us who we know make the similar amount of money to us, rather than making our spending a reflection of our values or what we want in the bigger picture of our lives. So that was something that I thought was really interesting, because once you're retired, your portfolio is what it is, and hopefully it continues to grow, but you have a fixed income basically, and you know what you're going to be spending year over year. But you're at an age where you're no longer surrounded by your work peers, and what you spend becomes more a reflection of where you live, who you are, what's important to you, and your values. So it's just really interesting as I reflect back on that period of working that this was one of the things that I never caught until right now. And I'm curious if you guys have ever thought about spending in that way. Now, those are the things that I thought I missed and I didn't. In terms of the things that I actually do miss, if I'm being completely honest, there's really absolutely nothing. There is nothing that I miss about working full-time as a W-2 employee. That just means like working for somebody else if you're not in the US. There are some things about entrepreneurship that I wouldn't say I miss, but I did really enjoy. And there were also some things about being a full-time employee that I also really enjoyed. But again, miss is a very strong word. And those things are, and I know I put this in the I do not miss, but I also have to put it honestly in the miss category, is structure. And I don't mean structure as in having my day dictated by somebody else, but structure in the sense that I had a basic routine that worked, and I was able to fit in the things that were important to me along with the things that I knew I had to get done. And it kept me running in a very sort of forward momentum way. I wouldn't go back to it necessarily, but I do appreciate having that level of structure, because once it's gone and you appreciate this structureless life, you're almost never getting that level of structure back again. So I miss it and I don't miss it. The other two things that I don't miss, but I appreciate more than I thought I would, is getting up and getting ready in the morning for something. Now I don't have to get up at all if I don't want to. I don't need to put on pants. I don't need to put on makeup. I don't need to brush my hair. And that's both a wonderful thing and completely structureless. So like, just imagine yourself if you never had to get up or get dressed or get ready for anything ever again. You think that that would be wonderful, and it is, but it can also get into dangerous territory sometimes. Let me just leave it there. And then the last thing that I don't miss necessarily, but I have very fond feelings about and memories around, are the coworkers that I had, not all of them, but some of them, and just the shit talk that we used to share based on our lived experience. So, you know, Sean in the cubicle over here and me in the cubicle over here would talk back and forth about, you know, like the recklessness of the company or where the stock's going or just our lives in general and the building that we worked in, like the lived experience we had as coworkers. And we would just crack jokes about it. And he had like this very sort of sterile, dry humor that used to crack me up. And I would be sitting at my desk, belly laughing, like tears coming down my face based on the most bizarre comments he would make. I miss those things a lot, because the thing about life is that those moments where you are laughing and cracking up and just appreciating the silliness and ridiculousness of it, those moments rarely happen at like formal events, like a wedding or something like that. You have memories made from weddings, but that's not when you're having the belly laughs. The belly laughs are happening when you and somebody else are experiencing something that is so dry, boring, crazy, or just absurd, and you are able to look at it with humor. Those events will probably never happen again in my retired life. And that's okay. There'll be other experiences and reasons to laugh, but I do miss that with my coworkers, because I've worked at some pretty crazy places. So those are the experiences that I both don't miss and think fondly of as it relates to work. And to be honest, I would never go back to it. You couldn't pay me enough. Life is far too short, and I'm too now entrenched in my own freedom to ever want to think about going back. I would definitely start another business again, but that's as far as I would go. So I'm curious to know, if you are retired, what do you miss? What do you not miss? And if you are still working, counting down the days to the point where you retire, what is it that you think you miss? Because I think you'll be surprised on the other side whether you miss it or not. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.